Thank you. Good evening and welcome to this meeting of Eastern Area Planning Committee. I'm Councillor Graham Pass, the chairman of committee. The other members of the committee present are councillors Bridgman, Linden, Macro, Mays, Woodhams and Hunt. I've got the following officers in attendance to advise and support us. Bob Dray, Team Leader for Development Control. Alice Atwood, Senior Planning Officer, who will be presenting the second item. Gareth Dowding on Zoom for any highways advice that we need. Kim Marr to keep me on the straight and narrow in particular, our solicitor, and Christine Elsasser, from Democratic Services, who is taking the minutes. I'm also assisted by Gordon Oliver, who will be the Zoom host for the meeting. And not to forget Steve Wilson from Environmental Health. Welcome to you all. Before we start proceedings, I'd like to explain, for the benefit of members of the public who may be watching, that tonight's meeting is being held both over Zoom and with councillors present and COVID compliant in the council chamber. I can confirm that those present in the chamber are sitting socially distanced and are thus permitted to remove their face masks while seated. Representatives making a presentation to the committee have been encouraged to do so remotely by Zoom, but those in attendance in person are equally welcome. At the appropriate time, there is a dais there with a microphone, and I will assist you and explain the timing when it comes to your turn to speak. The meeting is being live streamed on YouTube, so members of the public are able to follow the proceedings. Do members have any questions about the way in which this meeting will be conducted before we proceed? I take the silence as no. So item 1, apologies. Please may I have any apologies that we have received?
Councillor Richard Sumner, Councillor Graham Bridgman is substituting. Councillor Royce Longton with Nazir Hunt substituting, and Councillor Ross McKinnon.
And Councillor Alan Law, I believe, as well, who is out of the country. Members, item 2, minutes of the meeting held 15th of September 2021. Are you willing to accept these minutes as a true and accurate record? Councillor Bridgman is saying no. No. Well, Councillor Bridgman.
I raised my Zoom hand, Chairman.
You did. I'm very impressed.
Chairman, page 9.
Yes.
4th line down and 6th line down, we have valued reason. That's valid reason, Chairman.
Oh, well spotted.
Apart from that, Chairman.
Without. Well, it just proves you've read them. It's very thorough. What else can I say? With that minor amendment, members, may I please sign the minutes as a true and accurate record? I'm getting nods and various hands, so thank you. I will sign that now. Okay. Item 3, any declarations of interest? Councillor Bridgman, is that an old hand?
It is on.
Okay. Any declarations of interest, members? There are none. So in that case, we come first straight away to application 4. And before I introduce the item, I know that apologies have been given to all those concerned with this application for the IT failure. It was a complete failure 3 weeks ago. And I do apologise that all those who attended sat through 2 other applications for about over 2 hours. I can only apologise. It was something totally out of our control, but hopefully we'll be all right tonight. So without further ado, I'm going to ask Mr. Dray to introduce the report, and then we will progress from there. Mr. Dray.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll just share my screen. Hopefully you can all see that clearly. Just one moment while it catches up. There we go. Okay, members, the first application before you tonight is at Oakingham House, Bearcourt Road, Pangbourne. The application is for the conversion of the existing indoor swimming pool to create a kitchen, dining and family room with ancillary storage areas, a single-storey front extension to facilitate a utility room, a part first floor and part two-storey side extension with a covered terrace, and a single-storey extension to a detached outbuilding to create a gym. The application is before you because it's been called in by the local ward member, and the reason given is because the application is in the AONB outside of the settlement boundary and a change of use from equestrian, and we are recommending conditional approval. So here before you've got the application site outlined in red. Oakingham House is to at the north there at the top of the image. And as you see, there's also a large area of land further down here to the south. The proposed extensions I refer to are all located within here. I would confirm there is no proposed change of use to agriculture. There is a lot of land included within the red line that goes beyond the immediate formal gardens of the house, but given where the development is taking place, it doesn't raise any concerns about a change of use. This slide just shows you some of the key constraints in the area. The land is located outside of the settlement boundary for Pangbourne, and the area is within the North Wessex Downs area of outstanding natural beauty. You have some public footpaths in the area, including immediately adjacent to the site. So one on the northern side of the road that goes towards Pangbourne Hill, and then this other one on the south side that passes the northeastern boundary of the site, and then carries on in its way to Tidmarsh. And this is just zoomed out a bit further, so you can see the site here and how that snakes its way over to Tidmarsh. It's over there. Those members who were on the site visit remember that there was the parish councillor present remarked about views from Tidmarsh Lane, which is down in this direction here, and I've got some photos to show you of that in a moment. There's also finally just a listed building within Pangbourne College there, but there's no concern raised given the distance. So this is the site plan of the kind of built envelope, if you like, of the site where the extensions are proposed. To the top of your image, you've got Bearcourt Road and its driveway, and then it's the remodeling and extension of the ground floor here. Above that is the first floor extension, which is part two-storey extension down here, which will be a bit clearer on another plan. And then here you have this horseshoe outbuilding, and there's a proposed extension on that end there. So you see it's a neoclassical existing house. Got the front elevation at the top, the rear elevation here, the two side elevations, and part elevation sections of the outbuilding where it's proposed to be extended. And so here you see the ground floor plans, so showing the remodeling and forward extension here. And this bit is also a two-storey extension where it comes out a bit. And here you can see the extra bay for the garage there. And then the first floor extension, you see the roof as it's single story at the front there, the two-storey element, the first floor extension, and then the roof of the outbuilding. And that's just, there's also some dormers proposed in the main roof, facilitating the second floor in the main house. So there I'm comparing, you've got the existing elevation, front elevation at the top, and the proposed front elevation below. So you can see how it's been, got the extension here, proposed single story infill, and then the first floor above. Same from the rear with the existing at the top, and you can see the dormers being proposed, and then the first floor extension coming out above this wing here, and then this element here is a two-story extension, because it's coming back from the wall. So this area in here is recessed. And then from the western side elevation, so you can see the first floor extension here with the two-story extension and the the front extension here, just indicated there. And then from the eastern side, so that's the side from the footpath, you can see, you can only see the dormer really because it's all on the other side. And there you have the elevations of the outbuilding extension. So I'll go through some photos quickly. So that's the front, look, instead on the drive, looking at the front elevation. So this is where the first floor extension is continuing along with the single story front extension there. Just sweeping round to see the main house. Behind here is where the outbuildings are. So you can see the outbuilding kind of behind here. That's the view from the access onto Bear Court Road, which is quite typical of other views along there. It's obviously quite heavy tree cover, so there are some glimpse views through the trees, but fairly well screened. That photo is taken from towards the back of the formal gardens, looking back at the house at the rear elevation. So it's this wing here where the first and two-story extension are proposed. And then the garage is over to that side. And there's the garage. And so this is the horseshoe outbuilding. And it's being proposed on the end here. So just turning the corner a bit. So it's essentially filling in this area here, continuing along the design. That's a photo we've taken from the public footpath on the eastern side. So you can see the rear elevation of the house. Proposed extension will be behind there. And then if we turn slightly, you can see the end of the garage, which is going to be extended off here. That's the public footpath continuing up there. So that's the path that continues on down to Tidmarsh. That's stood at the back of the formal gardens, looking out at that open land. Just to give you a feel for the context. But this is unaffected by the proposals. And as requested on the site visit, we've got some photos from Tidmarsh Lane, which was taken roughly about here along the lane, looking back across. So I'll show you a zoomed in version, but that's stood on the road. You can see the bank there, open fields, and it's this house here.
To the left.
Nope, it's that one there. That's, yeah.
Oh.
It's, I think that's Pangbourne College.
Oh,
that way. And yeah, there you go, more zoomed in. So you can see the main roof there. So the extension's coming across here, and then the outbuilding is down there. So as we're outside of settlement, the principal policy against which the application is assessed is policy C6 for extensions in the countryside. One of the key issues, one of the key considerations there is whether or not the extension is subservient in scale and whether it's in keeping generally with the rural character of the area. Evidently, it's quite a large extension that's being proposed, but it is to a large house. So taking into account the height, the changes in the footprint and the overall scale of development, as officers, we are considering that it is subservient in scale. It respects the neoclassical design of the existing dwelling. I showed you the photo from Bear Court Road, where it'd have a limited impact on the street scene, given the boundary vegetation in particular. There are long distance views as shown on that last photograph, but given the distance and what you can see in the context, we don't consider the proposed extensions to be harmful in those views. There are closer views from the footpath, but again, in the context of the existing house and grounds, we don't judge them to be harmful. There are obviously no close neighbours that are directly affected by the proposal, so no concerns are being raised there, and no concerns are being raised in terms of parking, which has a sufficient amount. So there's nothing to report on the update sheet. So that concludes, I have to say. Thank you.
Right, and thank you very much, Mr. Dreyer. Members, as always, please, if you do have any questions, if you could note them until our speakers have spoken. The first of whom is from the Parish Council, Councillor John Higgs on Zoom. Can you hear us, Mr. Higgs? Is on. We cannot hear you, Councillor Higgs, so perhaps could you unmute?
Unmute.
Oh.
Right.
Thank
Here we
you.
are. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now, loud and clear. Thank you. You have up to 5 minutes to make your case. Can I assist you with any timekeeping?
No, only a couple of minutes, that's all.
Okay, that's good. But
Fine.
if you please stay there for any members to have any questions for you to answer when you've completed. So your time starts now.
Thank you. The application falls within the AONB, but it is outside of the settlement boundary of Pangbourne. The location plan is not particularly clear because it shows quite a large area with a red line, and we always thought that was equestrian, most of that. So is that taken to be the garden curtilage, or is that the whole of the land owned by the landowner? And the application is for a large, bulky building which will be prominent on the landscape. And I don't think that the photographs that were shown just now exactly show the house very clear, because if you move along the lane about 10 meters, you'll get a much different perspective of it. The previous application, approved back in '93, made note of the fact that much of the application was single story, so it wasn't that prominent in the landscape. Also, the drawings we don't think are complete because there's no existing block plan or site plan. There's only a proposed one. Plans approved in '93 show the buildings to the east to be a stable block, but this stable block now appears to be accommodation for 2 people. There's 2 separate dwellings there have been converted. Sorry, I just had reading my notes. Yeah, when the gymnasium, if it's extended, is not a problem, but we would ask that the footpath is kept clear at all times because it's quite well used, that path, and I hate to see it blocked off at any stage. That, Mr. Chairman, is all I wish to say. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, thank you. Members, do you have any questions for Councillor Higgs, please? I have Councillor Bridgman.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Higgs or Councillor Higgs. In relation to the footpath, I think there is a condition, a proposed condition dealing with that aspect. I'm just finding it. Which
yes.
So I'm just wondering what your position on that. Or it's indicative. It's not. It's an informative. It's informative too that there shall be no obstruction of the public right of way, and of course that's the whole point of a public right of way, that you can't obstruct it. So what do you say to that? I mean, having been on the site visit, I find it difficult to imagine that you would want to bring material down the footpath when you can bring it in effectively through the front gate. So I'm not quite clear on why the parish fears the footpath being blocked off.
Well, it was a comment that was made at one of their meetings because we didn't know that you could actually access in between the buildings. In the outbuilding, it shows us a roof over the top of it. We weren't aware that you could get between the buildings within. So that really applies to what we thought was there. And as you say, it's not really relevant now because they can do all the building from within.
Thank you. And another question, if I may, Chairman. On the red line question, surely what we're looking at on the red line is simply the extent of the land ownership of the owner. I mean, when we visited, the distinction between the formal garden area and what I can put it like the field, if it's really what it was, is quite distinct. So I'm not quite clear on the point you're making on the red line.
We've got in several places within the parish, we've had problems with what is taken to be the curtilage, the residential curtilage. Now, our understanding is that you can do work with inside a curtilage, but you should not be taking agricultural land into the curtilage of a garden.
Well, I'm sure that's a question we can pose to officers when we come to it, Chairman.
I think we should. I'll ask the officers.
And thank you, Councillor Higgs.
Right, thank you. Members, are there any other questions? No, we'll let you off lightly. Thank you, Mr. Councillor.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Right, we have no objectors, no supporters. We have an applicant, or sorry, the agent, I should say, and the one on your update sheet, members, Kaylee Mansfield is unwell, and I have therefore said it is perfectly legitimate for Mr. Sean Tanner, the agent, to make the case on the applicant's behalf. So, Mr. Tanner, are you there, please?
I hope you can hear me now. Any luck? I've unmuted. Anybody can hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. We had a picture of you and a young lady.
Young lady? There's nobody here, just me.
No, we seem to have.
Oh, that's my
You haven't
daughter.
got
Oh,
your
sorry
video
about that.
running, I think,
Yeah.
is the answer.
I'll just explain. The planner in our office was actually due to speak, and she's ill, so I'm doing the talk today. So that's why you've got me and my daughter. I'm sorry.
You're very welcome. Are you able to turn your video on? Is the question.
Turn my video on. I'm on an Apple, right? Yes, I can start my video. Here we go. How about that?
There we are.
There we are. Now we're there.
Now, the same
Technology.
rules of engagement. You have up to 5 minutes to make your case. May I assist you with any timekeeping?
I'm fine, thank you very much.
Okay, but please stay there after you've said your piece and see if members have any questions. Your time will start now.
Well, thank you, Chair. Just to be clear on one matter, a discussion about equestrian. That site in the previous ownership with Mr. Gibbons was never been used for equestrian for over 27 years. So I don't see the relevance of that in the current application in terms of any concerns that the parish may have. So now I'll continue with what I actually want to say. This application is for the extension and alteration of Oakingham House, Pangbourne, following pre-application engagement with the Council's planning officers. The suggested amendments have been duly incorporated into the proposal. For completeness, the application seeks to convert the existing swimming pool to facilitate a new kitchen, dining and family room with ancillary storage spaces. An extension is also proposed to the existing outbuildings to provide a new gym space for the applicants. The extension at first floor will deliver 2 new bedrooms with en-suites and covered balcony. The dimensions of the proposed elements are concisely articulated in paragraph 1.3 of the submitted committee report. As outlined in the Planning Committee Report 6.2, the dwelling is located outside the settlement boundary of Pangbourne. Local Plan Policy C6 provides presumption in favour of extensions of existing permanent dwellings subject to the development is considered to be subservient to the original dwelling, has no adverse impact on setting, the use of materials are appropriate, and there are no significant harm to the neighbour amenity. I will address this briefly now. Subservience. The first floor extension above the swimming pool will not increase the footprint of the dwelling, and the single-storey element would increase the floor space modestly. In line with the Planning Policy C6, the proposed extension has a modest visual impact as the overall width has been reduced by 5 metres, and the proposed eaves and ridge heights are lower than the main dwelling respectively. Setting. A recessed balcony has been incorporated with the overhanging roof so as to cast a shadow to reduce any reflection of glazing and light spillage at first floor level and to create a defined separation between the original and the proposed. The proposal does not materially extend beyond the existing footprint and therefore does not unduly encroach on the AONB. Materials. All materials are proposed to match the existing and where possible, material will be salvaged from the proposed demolition. In particular, the existing roof tiles and the stone surrounds to all the windows and doors. Neighbours. There are no neighbours in close enough proximity to be affected by this proposal in terms of loss of light, loss of privacy or dominance. Given there are no policy conflicts for the proposal, we respectfully request on behalf of the applicants that the application is approved in line with the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Mr. Tanner. Members, Councillor Bridgman.
Thank you, Chairman. The one aspect that I had some concern about on the site visit and was the introduction of dormers into the second floor roof line where currently there are Velux windows, and because I appreciate the fact that the extension at first floor level is lower than the existing first floor, and I take that on board. My concern was with regard to the second floor and those windows, and that did seem to me to introduce an aspect of overlooking where it wasn't in existence before because of the line of the windows. So I just seek your response to that.
The dormers are there in terms of the classical design and architectural design. They are inherent in that type of Italianate design. We feel they add more of a dimension to the actual current architecture. So we incorporated them for that reason, not necessarily to gain more volume, but to gain a better outlook from the top floor, which is currently very subservient room space. So in our opinion, it creates shadow gaps. It creates more, just generally more interest in a 3D dimensional building than a two-dimensional building. And they're built with traditional lead work with a traditional curved lead roof, radius to roof dormer. So they're incredibly subservient to the main roof in terms of volume and scale.
Okay, you're happy with that, Councillor Bridgman?
Well, I heard the response.
You heard the response. Members, any other questions? No? Thank you very much indeed for your time, Mr. Tanner.
Pleasure.
Just for completeness, I don't see Councillor Gareth Hurley, the ward member. Can I just check that he isn't there? No, he is not there. So in that case, members, do you have any questions for Mr. Dray? Councillor Macro.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was wondering, there's got a lot of information on dimensions in this report, but nothing about how much the size of the building is an increase on that before. And also, would that be an increase on the existing building? Because I noticed in the wording of the policy, they talk about the cumulative effect on the existing building. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Macro. We have given you dimensions, which are a percentage of the floor area. So in paragraph 6.5, the replacement dwelling represents approximately increase in floor area of 27%. And then also in 6.6, at ground floor level, the single story front and two-story rear extension would increase the floor space by just 5%. At first floor level, the proposals would increase the floor area by approximately 60%, and at second floor level, increase the amount to 19% above the existing floor area. And the increase to the outbuilding is 39%. These are indicators of subserviency, percentage increase, but it's also about heights, relative scale, footprint. I don't think you can look at one in isolation. So we've given you the ones that we think are relevant to the assessment, but yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
So I must have I'd forgotten those numbers, but could you give us an idea of the actual overall increases in footprint and not footprint, in floor area and in volume?
Yeah. 36.5, I believe. Sorry. Oh,
my understanding is
6.5.
under 6.5. It says the increase of the footprint of the main dwelling house by approximately 24 square metres. Is
beg
that?
your pardon. Yes.
Yes.
Oh, well, I corrected myself from footprint to floor space, because footprint is the actual area that the building is sitting on, whereas we've got an increase in floor space on about 3 different levels.
Yeah, that's floor area.
Yes.
Floor area, not footprint.
Right. Are you happy with that, Councillor Macro?
The other part of the question was whether that's because I noticed there's been a various planning applications over the years. So are those increases on the original building, or as it stands now, if you see what I mean? So are these cumulative over the years, or just on the latest?
I believe it's existing, but we are assessing it as subservient rather than disproportionate. I just went down, but yeah.
Right. Okay. Councillor Bridgman.
Thank you, Chairman. Firstly, to develop the red line equestrian curtilage point, I've read 612, but just asking Mr. Dre to just really answer the question: what is the domestic curtilage? What are planning treating as the domestic curtilage? I mean, I can see a line on the red line plan around what looks to be a line around the formal gardens. It's not coloured, but it's a black line. And the question as to what uses the rest of that land could be put if the owner wished to put it to such a use.
Thank you. The red line denotes the application site, so it's not necessarily the same as the residential curtilage. It is quite common for householder applications that it is one and the same, but it's not always the case. So there's nothing wrong with it going around all of that land. We have included an informative to make clear that we don't necessarily agree that the whole of the red line is residential curtilage, and the concept of a residential curtilage is actually quite tightly constrained around the building. So I think it's probably safe to say that the residential curtilage goes around the formal gardens that we witnessed, but not around, from what I can judge, the remainder of the land. We've got nothing to suggest that's the case. But we are confident that obviously the proposed extensions are certainly within the residential curtilage.
And second question, if I may, Chairman, is just to again develop the public right-of-way point, which is dealt with in 613 and in the informative I took the parish council to. Simply say there's no, I don't think, construction access point. Is it useful to condition that the access for construction will be through the main entrance?
As a matter of principle, we should only be applying conditions that are necessary to make the development acceptable. So quite often we do apply construction method statements, which will cover things like parking and construction vehicles, working hours, stuff like that. Obviously, this house is quite lucky in terms of access and not being on top of neighbours to not raise a particular concern with us that we thought that was necessary. But if members are concerned, then it would be a reasonable thing to consider adding. I'll just add on the public footpath, the reason we have it as an informative and not as a condition is because it's covered by separate legislation if you obstruct a footpath. So we don't need to duplicate that control. Thank you.
Okay, you're happy with that. Members, any other questions? And may I just check with the Zoom host? No one has telephoned in, have they? No, thank you. In that case, members, the debate, who's going to kick us off? Councillor Woodhams.
Thank you, Chairman. I think it's a stunning design. It really does bring the whole building to life. If you can compare the two before and after, absolutely wonderful. Dormers every time. I think years ago we used to talk about Velux windows and dormers, and for goodness sake, what character do Velux windows actually give? Very, very little indeed. Dormers every time. No policy conflicts. Accords with officer recommendation. I propose officer's recommendation.
Okay, I'm not going to foreshorten debate, but does that find a seconder?
Yes, Chairman.
It does. Right, Councillor Macro.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I missed the site visit for this as I was away, but and also the debate last time. But I do know this building because I've frequently taken my dog to a groomer and the kennels on Tidmarsh Lane. And as I've driven along that lane, I've noticed this building, which is extremely prominent in the landscape, And I have to agree with the parish council. The photograph does not do it justice. And I've often thought, how the devil did that ever get approved? Because it is so prominent. So I'm not at all happy with this proposal, Mr. Chairman. It's going to make what I think is a bad situation worse.
Okay, Councillor Linden.
Councillor Linden, is your microphone on or off?
I did press it on. Yeah, it went off. Thank you, Councillor Bridgman. But I've examined the paperwork, and I think it's in proportion to the development, and that's why I've seconded the application as such.
Thank you. Councillor Bridgman.
Thank you. I raised the dormer issue because it makes a distinct change to that roof line. The rest of the extension, as we saw on the site visit, really is, I fully accept, is subservient to the main build, to the rest of the, it's not to the main building, but to the rest of the building. It's an extension of the main building. But the dormer issue, and I take on board the issue of appearance of dormers within that vernacular, but nevertheless, my concern was that whereas at the moment you have effectively a flat roof line, you're introducing structure into that roof line, and it does make a difference. Having said that, I think that in the context of the building as an entirety, this is absolutely acceptable. I really don't see any issue with this particular extension on this particular plot in this particular landscape. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Well, it sounds the three of you are talking positively and one isn't at the moment. Any other points of debate, or should we go to the vote? Right, we have a proposal seconded for officer's recommendation of approval subject to the usual conditions as on the agenda. Those in favour, please show. And that one against, please show. Right, the conditional permission is granted. Thank you, members. Sorry, we now turn to the second application, which is the Beanham landfill site, Grange Lane, Beanham in Reading, or near Reading, I should say. It's no, we're not in Reading at all. And I turn to Alice Atwood to present the item for us.
Okay, so this application is at the Greenham landfill site, Grange Lane, Beanham, Reading. The proposal is for a temporary change of use to allow for the creation of a laydown facility for the storage of materials and light fabrication operations, including welding, to support the construction of the SSE Slough multi-fuel combined heat and power facility, and a permanent provision of fencing, lighting and hard standing areas to provide for the future use of the permitted land, which is for composting activities. The applicant is the Slough SSE Slough Multifuel and Grundons. The reason this has been brought to before you is it was called in by the Development Control Manager because of the need to balance the economic benefits against the environmental considerations in the area of outstanding natural beauty, and we are recommending conditional approval. So the site is approximately 2.8 hectares in size and is accessed from Pips Way, which is via the Bath Road, the A4. There are no dwellings within approximately 300-metre radius on site. Then the closest dwellings run along the Bath Road. The application is not within any defined settlement boundary and is regarded as open countryside for the purposes of planning. The development is in the area of outstanding natural beauty. The site is located adjacent to the protected employment site known as the Beanham Industrial Area. The site has an extent permission for composting facilities. There you go. So this is an extent permission for composting facility, which means hard standing was a part of that permission as well as planting. If we move on to the next slide, you can see. So this is what permission was granted in 2010 for the composting facility. You can see sort of where the pods would be, and our site is only half of that site. So there should be, there'll be a red line shaded in yellow, should denote where our site is. There you go. That's where the current site is. Okay. This proposal can be kind of viewed in two parts. First is for the temporary creation of the Lansdowne facility. Temporary permission is sought to May 2024. And this is to facilitate the Slough multi-fuel facility, which it will, once the Slough multi-fuel facility is constructed, it will produce power by converting waste of derived fuel into, and it'll be a low carbon electricity and heat source. It will provide power up to 100,000 homes. The kind of things that will be delivered to the site and stored there will be large metal columns, boiler panels, sections of combustion grates, hoppers, silos. There'll be some light fabrication operations and pre-assembly works, which include welding, grinding, hammering of platework and steel. There'll be also 5 temporary porta cabins that will be on the site for welfare purposes. The second part of the proposal is the permanent provision of fencing, lighting, and areas of hard standing. This will be permanent operational development to enable the permitted composting activities to go ahead in the future. The most important policies to consider here are APP1, ADPP5, CS9, CS10 of the core strategy. These need to sort of balance each other out. We have had a look at the I think that's just showing the floor plan of the porta cabin. There are going to be 5 of those on site. Oh, could we go back to the planting slide? Yeah, thank you. So a landscape and visual appraisal has been submitted and was included as part of this application. And it concluded there would be low visual effects by this application going forwards, and that there was planting around the edge, substantial planting to make the proposed development blend into the countryside. And it's also worth noting that it is surrounded by industrial uses as well. So it concluded that there would be a sort of neutral effect on the landscape. You'd like to, that's just a cross section to show sort of the drainage that's going to be in place with the bunds and things like that. The fencing and gates will be painted green. Again, this was to address the area of standing natural beauty comments. This is a plan to show where the noise measurement apparatus was positioned around the site, because there has been concerns from the parish in regards to noise. A noise assessment has been submitted and reviewed by the environmental health officer, and no objections have been raised. And we are confident that there will be a low noise impact, and we are confident that conditions can be used to control the noise, and this can be through conditioning hours of work. Now for some photos. This is the southwest view from within the site. You can see the entrance to the site on the far left. View from the east of the site, that's looking in towards the site along the access road. View looking north to the site. View looking south towards the A4 Bath Road. From the northern edge, that's sort of looking back this up. View from the northeast corner of the site looking towards the entrance. And you can also see some industrial units in the background there. This is the standing at the entrance view of the access when leaving the immediate site. This is a view north towards the Grundon's Way Bridge. View south towards Pips Way, again standing from within the access. A view from looking outside the site. So this is on just outside the site looking into. And this was standing at the Grundon's Way Bridge looking down Pips Way, and you can just see the entrance to the site on the left there. And these were some more contextual sites because the site is within the Grundon's waste facility. So this was just to sort of show you what there is around there. So we consider this decision to be finely balanced. The application is located in the open countrysides, but does find support under policy C9 and C10 because of the economic benefits and climate change benefits. We feel significant weight should be given to that. The temporary use would intensify the industrial operations for a temporary time period, but the site has currently got permission for green waste composting facilities. Even though it's not operational at present, this site would enable that to come forth. The fallback position, so it should be considered of the operational development that they already have permission for. Given the context of the commercial development within the immediate facility and considering the postal can be absorbed into the landscape, we considered any landscape harm would be limited. And although you have to apply great weight to this limited harm, it is considered it would be lightly outweighed by the support and economic benefits under policy C9 and CS10. The environmental and technical considerations have all been found to be acceptable by our consultees, and therefore we've recommended approval on that basis.
Right, well, thank you very much. Members, we have Councillor John Steele from Beanham Parish on Zoom. Can you hear us, Councillor Steele? We're unable to hear you. Can you hear us?
Can you hear me now?
Oh, there you are. Yes.
Sorry, it's a nightmare.
Oh, I know. We've all gone through this one. We see you and we hear you. So you have up to 5 minutes. Can I assist you with any timekeeping?
I practiced this, Chairman, and I'm sure it will go horribly wrong because I've been adding some notes as the planning officer has been speaking. So I'll see how far I can get.
We'll see
So,
how far you get. I'll give you a warning with a minute to go, and give you fair time to wind up. Your time then will start now.
Thank you. Good evening, Chairman, councillors and officers, and thank you for letting me speak on behalf of Beanham Parish Council. I'd firstly like to compliment the planning officer for the way she has dealt with our concerns, and although most have been addressed, we still have some issues we'd like to present this evening. But it's much appreciated when importance is given to our concerns which have been raised. I will not go through the detail, but our concerns are essentially twofold, and they relate to potential disturbance arising from noise and light. Our original objection related to the feeling of inadequacy in terms of information relating to mitigating these concerns. And the following comments relate to the officer's report, but I do note that the planning conditions seem to be quite strong in dealing with some of our concerns. We note the hours of operation limitations, which will be conditioned, but do not agree that these should be just relating to core activities. And some of the looseness of the language relating and enforceability of exceptions and reference to less noisy activity outside these hours gave us concern. We believe conditions need to be enforceable, so we request no activities outside of these specified hours. And our concerns were heightened when we read evidence at paragraph 6.42 of the officer's report, which relates to exceptional nighttime deliveries. Essentially, this site is closed in the from about 6 o'clock through to the following morning, and it can be evidenced if you drive along the A4 and the A340 roundabout. So the site is essentially cold and dark during the evening hours and at the weekends. We've considered the noise impact assessment and the conclusion there will be a low impact. And we understand, obviously, that you can't mitigate a low impact. A low impact is, by definition, not something that needs mitigating. However, we have read such conclusions many times before, particularly in relation to the A4 scrapyard. The reality is we do hear noise in the village as it appears to follow the contours of the surrounding landscape. And as no mitigation is proposed, it appears we can only rely on the hours of operation to mitigate those concerns. Hence why we've requested that those hours be limited to on Monday to Friday from 8:30 till 5 o'clock and on a Saturday from 8:30 to 2 o'clock. I did make a note at this point that maybe noise monitoring might be something that councillors would like to consider, because noise is one of those things which is perceptive. You need to be there when you hear it, and it's the cumulative impact, which I'll address in a minute. Lighting, I don't think we'll go into any detail about this, but we feel the planning conditions should be prescriptive. Conditions are fine, but conditions are not something that it's easy for us to have a view on or scrutiny, because they are dealt with by the officer and the proposer and developer. So we would like a more prescriptive approach to that condition. Our final point relates to cumulative impact. We've been increasing concerns about this as we've been faced with a number of planning applications over the past few years in and around Beanham Industrial Estate and on the adjacent land. And I've noted here whether it would be possible to have some sort of noise management plan for the area. I know this might not be something you can consider tonight, but it does raise us concerns. We note the developers and proposers always quote, and we also note the planning officer quotes, that this area is surrounded by industrial land and it does have industrial land as a context.
And you have 1 minute. With this. You have 1 minute remaining.
Thank you. I do disagree with this, as you will see from the photos that were shown, and if you've come down Beanham Hill, this is clearly open countryside. We don't object to the principle of development. We understand the economic benefits of it, but it is just that cumulative impact of noise and light pollution arising from Beanham Industrial Estate and the adjacent land. Perhaps these are matters more for a local plan, but we do believe that council should be aware of this cumulative impact, and particularly as we are faced with even more planning applications in the future, one being for a doggy daycare centre, and we will be making comments to that. So thank you for your respect and views. And we just hope you can bear these sort of concerns when you discuss the application. Thank you.
With 2 seconds to spare, I'm very impressed. Thank you very much. Members, any questions, please, for Councillor Steele? Are we going to let him off lightly? No questions. Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We now have Philip Atkinson from Grundon Waste Management in attendance. Please come to the dais. Now, we've never had this before, one on Zoom and one in real life. We also have Mark Lane, who is the agent from DPP, attending from Zoom. So first of all, Mr. Lane, can you hear us? Can we hear you?
I can. Can you hear me?
We can. We can't see you, which is always nice to be able to do.
Yes, absolutely. So do I join as panelist? I think I probably do, don't I?
Yeah, I'm getting the nod that yes, that you can be, if you can turn your video on. Can you try again? Oh,
Is that better?
That's much better.
Excellent.
All right, that's good. Now, we have, you have between you up to 5 minutes to make your case. How do you wish to adjust the timing? Who's going to lead? Who's going to take the second? Or are you both here just to, well, is one of you here to answer questions?
With Mark's permission, Chairman, I'll make a statement and then we'll both be available for questions answered.
That's however you wish to play it, as long as you're within the 5 minutes, that's absolutely fine. So in that case, Mr. Atkinson, over to you, and I will still ask Mr. Lane if he wishes to add anything after you've finished.
Okay. Thank you. My name is Philip Atkinson. I'm the Estates Director for Grundon Waste Management, and I am joined by Mark Lane from DPP this evening. I hope that most of you are at least aware of who Grundon are. Grundon Waste Management, we're a familiar sight on the roads around here with our blue wagons, so hopefully we're not completely unfamiliar to you. We are a a long-established and well-known firm in the local area. And just to put it into some sort of context, we employ about 120 people from our facilities based in West Berkshire. We do thank officers for their report and note their recommendation for approval, which does follow months of detailed negotiations and revisions to the proposal to ensure it is acceptable. We're also pleased to note that the application now has no objections from statutory consultees, and as far as we're aware, members of the local community. And it's also pleasing to note that the EHO and the AONB in particular have raised no objection over this proposal. Ultimately, this proposal is necessary to support the development of SSE's low carbon power generation plant, which is approaching the early stages of construction, which is why this proposal has now become so time critical. Nonetheless, we feel it is helpful to note for your reassurance that the physical works of surfacing, lighting and fencing which are proposed are already consented under a previous implemented planning consent, and that what this application seeks is essentially the temporary change of use of this land. And I probably speak to you directly when I say that we respect and acknowledge that if you do grant consent today, it will be for a temporary consent, and we hear that loud and clear. We're also extremely pleased by the very strong support for this proposal from the economic development team, who point to the clear economic benefit this proposal will bring to my own business, neighbouring businesses and local businesses. In our own case, it will enable us to invest in site infrastructure which otherwise would not be economically feasible. And so the long-term economic consequences are probably even greater than we initially anticipate. I would like to just take this opportunity to thank officers for their professionalism in the handling of this application. Negotiations are inevitably difficult, and at times we might not always agree, but the fact this application is being heard today and not next month is entirely down to officers' professionalism and a willingness to go the extra mile to engage positively with us. So we do thank them directly. And on that note, Chairman, I just thank you for your time, and we are available to take any questions.
And Mr. Lane, you still have a couple of minutes left. Is there anything you wish to add?
I've just to reiterate the comments that this is a well-balanced and thorough report, and I thank officers for working so diligently with myself and members of my staff to get where we are today. I thank them greatly.
Okay, thank you. Right, I have Councillor Linden for a question first, and if you could say who you're, well, if you address it to Mr. Atkinson, and then Mr. Lane can come in if need be.
Thank you, Chairman. Apologies I couldn't get to the site visit. I got done by track and trace, but luckily I was negative. Going through the report, I noticed that you've got temporary use to May 2024. In the event, I've got three questions. The first one is it likely if there are any delays in the project, you may need to extend, or are you quite comfortable within the time period?
I think that's a really difficult one for me to answer because I'm not building it and it's not my plant. We're applying for 2024. If it was an application for an extension beyond that, that would come before officers. Again, it would be a decision to be made then. I would hope that we could get it into 2024. Unfortunately, we're all too familiar with build programs, and sometimes there is a bit of stretch. All I know is that contractually, they've got a very tight target which they've got to hit. And if they don't hit it by 2024, the contractor pays an awful lot of money. So it's in their interest to get it delivered on time.
Just to add into that, there is some slack built into that time frame. So their programme envisages completion before that end date. So we built in some delay time. So we are fairly confident, or as confident as you can be, that will be completed in time.
Okay, my second question, maybe it's a daft question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. I presume that the new facility is going to be in Slough Borough Council's area?
Yes,
yeah,
that's right.
So the third question is, I noticed the amount of electricity going to be generated by the Slough plant. Will there be electrical generation in this area as well while you're doing the temporary facility?
Not connected with this. As you may know, Grunton already generates electric using the methane from the landfill, which is there at the moment, although that's declining, but that's entirely separate from...
So this wouldn't be additional, no? No. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Macro.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I noticed from the transport statement that talking about, I think, something like 15 HGV journeys a day. I just wanted to check that is the totals, because there'll be trucks coming in from Avonmouth and then leaving, and then trucks coming in and then leaving for Slough. Is that, so are all those movements included in that number, please?
Perhaps unfairly, I'd pass over to Mark to answer that one.
I think the answer off the top of my head, because that's quite a detailed Alice Atwood might know more, but I think that's a total of 15 coming in and 15 leaving. So there'd be a total of 30 movements per day.
Thank you. All right, thank you very much. Anyone else? Any other questions for these gentlemen? No, thank you very much. We now have the ward member, Councillor Bowick, who I see is there. Can you hear us, Councillor Bowick? We cannot hear you, Councillor Bowick, or see you.
I can hear you, Chairman.
We can hear you now, and we still can't see you. We've got a picture of you. Oh, there we go.
There, that's much nicer, isn't it?
That's much better. You know the score. You've got up to 5 minutes to make your case, and please stay there for any questions members may have. Your time starts now.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, I'm not going to trouble you and the members and officers for very long. We've heard from Councillor Steele a very comprehensive statement of the parish's concerns, which are shared by me and are also echoed by residents who've lobbied my support and Padworth Parish Council, who are hard by the site as well. So that's effectively, all I want to say, and I want to just urge members to consider those statements that have been made. I know you always do, but I think, as I say, Councillor Steele's argument is very sound, and I support that.
Right, thank you. Members, any questions? Councillor Macro, that's an old hand, I believe. Any questions for Councillor Berwick? No? Well, we will bear what you say in mind. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Members, any questions for our officers? Councillor Bridgman.
Thank you, Chairman. This application, and Councillor Macro and I were the sole members of the site visit, and it was quite interesting. This application, I found it interesting that the way round the application was titled, because we have an application in part for the temporary use, but in part for the permanent provision of something that follows an existing extant permission. And so I'd like to turn the application on its head for the moment, just to understand from officers what the site could be developed for in terms of the composting facility, and how much of what is proposed is actually the permanent stuff that's going to stay there beyond 24, because, and I fully accept, there's already a planning permission for the composting site. So just to understand what could be done anyway and what is going to be done anyway, and therefore the relative impact of the temporary element to the application.
Right, Alice, that's a good one for you.
I don't know if we should get the 2010 site plan up for the extent permission. So the extent permission, you can always, there's already hard standing that can be put down at any time. If I just sort of talk through the extent permission block plan. So you can, yeah, that's the one. So you can see on there, they've already got proposed planting, and on the photos that we showed, you can see a lot of that is already there on site. As part of this permission, the planting would be bolstered up even more. When it comes to lighting, it's a matter of agreeing details, and that's exactly what we've got coming forward with this. We've got a condition, a lighting condition to agree lighting. It will probably be to a better standard because we have more guidance on the correct lighting for the area of outstanding natural beauty now. The fencing, again, they could put the fencing in under the extent permission, but we've also got it in this new permission. So a lot of it is could be built out. It's more just the use that is, some people may view as more intense. It will be different, but then it will revert back to the composting.
Thank you. Yes. So if I take that, this could be developed in any event for the composting facility. The difference between the two is perhaps the number of vehicle movements, perhaps the amount of noise, because this is construction that's going on site in order to cart stuff off to Slough to build what they're building. The other point I'd like to make, Chairman, having been on site visit, if we can go to the photographs, Bob, I'll tell you which one I wanted to pick out just to perhaps assist members. It's that sort of one that looks out towards the A4. That one. That's, yeah, that one. So members, I mean, that gives you an idea of the distance here between the site that is proposed to do this work on and the distance across the field, as it were, to the A4. It is a chunk of a distance. You've heard that the nearest house is about 400 metres away. And the other aspect, I think, that really came out on the site visit is that, I mean, and I don't want to go into debate, and I will mention this in debate, but we're dealing with, and the photographs show it, a site that is already laid to hardcore. So this is not a green field that is somehow is proposed to be. Of course, there's already planning permission, but it is already laid to hardcore. So really, I think we're discussing, and officers will correct me if I'm wrong, the extent of noise and work and lighting that's got to go on in order to construct the stuff, the slough, over and above what they could do anyway with the composting facility. Thank you, Jim.
I think that was a sort of question that you wish to add to it, Alice.
I was going to say, I agree with everything that you said, yeah.
Well, very well said, thank you. Members, I'm looking, I can't see Zoom hands at the moment because the screen sharing. Are there any other questions for officers? I'll put it back now. There appear to be none. Who's going to start the debates? Councillor Bridgman again.
Chairman, there were some discussions over the weekend about the green belt and references to the AONB. And my view on this is there is AONB and there's AONB. This is at one end of AONB. This is a former waste. This was contaminated land, I think. This is a former effective industrial site. If you look across the field, you can see industrial buildings in not very far distance. You've got a weighbridge just up the lane from where this is. It already has, and we've established, planning permission for composting. So I do think that I do wish to congratulate the Development Control Manager, because I do think this is the type of application. I've looked at looked online, and there are no formal objections apart from the reference to the parish councils. So it wouldn't perhaps have come to committee had the Development Control Manager not brought it to committee. And I want to congratulate officers on that, because I do think this is precisely the type of application that members should have a say in respect of, because it is of public concern. Nevertheless, site already has permission for activity. The question is, how much over that level of activity is this adding? And what are the impacts of that level of activity, particularly in terms of noise and in terms of lighting? And to some extent, bound around those two is times of operation, because as I think has been said, noise at halfway through the day is one thing, noise at night or noise in early morning is quite another, and lighting similarly. Now, I do think there's been we've heard there's been quite a lot of negotiation to get to where we are in terms of the proposed conditions. One thing I would ask officers, though, if you compare proposed condition 5 and proposed condition 6, could we decide on whether we're using the 24-hour clock or the 12-hour clock and go with one of them? I would prefer 24-hour, but that's my personal. Chairman, I think that officers have done an awful lot of work to get to a position where so we've got the construction delivery. So I take it that is bringing stuff on and taking it off, and because after all, the purpose of this temporary application is to construct stuff on site and then cart it off to Slough. And I can understand why this is a convenient site for that, and I can understand why they chose it, given its proximity to the A4 and thus to the M4. But I do want members, and I'm not at the moment going to come in on this, but I do want members to consider what the hours of operation, given what Beenham Parish Council have said, should be, both in terms of actually building the thing and in terms of operating the thing once it's built. But in that aside, I think the lighting strategy I'm reasonably happy with. I personally think they've sorted that one, and therefore I am minded to propose officers' recommendation, but I'd like to hear what members think about hours in particular. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, that's, I understand. So you have not made a proposal at this stage. We have Councillor Macro.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I note in the kind of conclusions to the report that officers say that this is a finely balanced decision. And one of the things that kind of counts towards it is the economic development impact. But I think I'd like to take issue with some of that, because the Economic Development Officer mentions the benefits to the local daytime economy in and around Aldermaston train station. Well, as far as I'm aware, there's only the one business in that area, which is a filling station. So I don't think we can give much weight to the local economic impact. And a lot of the economic benefit really is more towards Slough and the wider area rather than to West Berkshire. So I'm in two minds about this one, Mr. Chairman. I must say that if it wasn't for the extent permission, I would be going against it. But Baines has already got that permission. I'm finely balanced, Mr. Chairman.
You're finely balanced too. Fair enough. Members, any further comments? Councillor Bridgeman's raised some points. Does anyone wish to comment on those? Councillor Linden.
Yes, I'd like to ask Councillor Bridgman these sort of hours he was thinking to amend the hours, really, just give us some guidance. And
But before I ask Councillor Bridgman's idea of that, and I understand precisely what he and indeed the parish council and indeed the ward member and neighbouring parish council have said, and understand the concerns, noise does travel, but then there are operational reasons which I don't fully understand. So could I please ask our planning officer or team leader, one of you or the other, you've obviously gone into this in great detail, what reasonable flexibility could we have in asking for there to be any changes in what is proposed? Then I'll ask Councillor Bridgman to see whether he concurs or not, and it's up to members then to make their decision.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll try to answer that if I can. The hours that we proposed in these conditions are based on the hours that were assessed on the noise report as our starting point. Given the nature of this facility, that it's essentially providing a laydown facility en route to a construction site in Slough, obviously timing can be an issue in when those deliveries take place. So they have been open up front to say that there will be some times when they may need to prepare for an early morning delivery, or there will be times where they have to go beyond those core hours. But the difficulty we've had is finding some restrictions that then tie that down succinctly. So the way we've sought to tackle it is by giving those core hours and then putting in the provision that it's unless otherwise agreed with the local planning authority. And I hope there is that our intention there is that we can be approached if they know that they need to do some out of hours work, and we can agree what we consider to be reasonable and the parameters we'd set for that. And also we would learn as we go along. If that causes disturbance once or twice, then we would know the next time and adapt. So
well,
we're trying to introduce some flexibility.
No, I understand that, and sorry, I'm going to interject somewhat, if I may. Chairman's prerogative and so on. There's one thing having a relatively quiet lorry delivering something. There's another set of circumstances. If someone gets the big hammers out and starts hammering metal and using angle grinders. I have one myself for DIY purposes. They can make quite a noise, which is of a frequency that travels. So what I think what we need to bottom out is, I've got no issue on a personal level with quiet activity. I have a problem with noisy activity, bearing in mind we've heard, and I personally have sympathy with the view when it was expressed that noise can follow contours up the hill. I know that road up the hill very well. There are a number of properties up there which look down on this site from a reasonably great distance, but nevertheless with nothing very much to attenuate any sound. So could you just elaborate a little more, then I'll come back to Councillor Bridgman. Mr. Drake.
I suppose what I could add is we have, if you're looking at those conditions in debate, we have split them up too. So there's one that covers operating hours for industrial processes like you describe, or the operation of machinery, whereas there's a separate one for delivery hours, for example. So if you could take a different view potentially on different ones. It's tricky to give a firm answer just because of the nature of the type of development. We've tried to come up with a solution that gives us flexibility, but also retains control, because if it is causing a problem, then it's still in our gift to reject a request in the future.
So you've got that safeguard built in. Councillor Mays, there are 3 hands up at the moment. I don't know whether they're old hands or not. I promised I'd go back to Councillor Bridgman, which I will do, unless it's relevant specifically to the point that's just been made. I guess it could be.
Absolutely relevant.
I thought it might be. Councillor Mays, could you just, I'll come back to you in just a second.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm looking in particular at the hours of work section of the report from 662 onwards. And my concern is with 663 and the answer that's just been given. Because here we have a reference to materials would arrive 24 hours a day. So that looks like vehicles coming onto site in the early hours of the morning. Critical that materials needed for the next day are on the construction site by 7:30 a.m. Now, I'm not clear whether the construction site being referred to is this site at Beanham or the construction site at Slough. So, in other words, if materials got to be on the construction site at Slough by 7:30 a.m. in order that Slough operates, it's got to leave Beanham sometime in the early hours of the morning. So there's a question there. Or is it material coming onto site for 7:30? And just to develop the noise piece, the parish council rightly referred to noise monitoring, and indeed, in terms, we deal with noise monitoring regularly in licensing in relation to events and music and so on and so forth. So I wonder what officers consider in terms of the question from the parish council about noise monitoring as one way of not controlling, but at least checking what was going on and how noisy and what the dB levels were out on site.
Right. Well, that's a very valid point. I'm going to ask Mr. Dray to start the answer to it. And we have Steve Wilson from our Environmental Health Department, who I will also ask to make a comment after Mr. Dray. So Mr. Dray first.
You're right, the 7:30 refers to Slough. By the nature of the applicants accepting the conditions, which obviously restrict them to those core hours, I think it would be the rarer occasion, because you wouldn't sign up to conditions that limit you to that great extent. It may be something worth considering.
Sorry, if I can just come back on that. I don't quite understand. If they've got to get material to Slough by 7:30 a.m., how on earth they can have an operating hour that starts at 7:30 a.m. at Beanham?
This is on occasion. It's how we understand it.
Well, the words in the report, it is critical the materials needed for the next day are on construction site. The next day is pretty much every day of construction, surely. I don't follow officers on that one.
I believe we've taken that from...
So we have looked at this in the sense of, we did take it from the planning statement, and then we asked for more clarification on the working hours, and this was the clarification that we were provided. And what we're trying to do is because you've got 6 tests when you make the conditions, and if we put a condition on that will affect the deliverability of the actual development itself, then it's not going to be a fair condition and could be open to appeal. So what we've been trying to do is carefully word the condition to try and find a compromise between the sort of the parish councillor's concern, but also not stopping the deliverability of the development overall. And it's very difficult because it is a sort of just-in-time type of development. There is going to be some changes, but we have in all the the hours of work, we've put that they need to consult us in writing if they're going to be doing things outside of those times, so we can monitor it, and there will be this continuous monitoring, and we can change it if we get sort of complaints, and we're hoping to keep a continuous dialogue afterwards. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to ask Steve Wilson if he has any, the Environmental Health Officer. Do you have any additional comments that you wish to make? We cannot hear you if you're on Zoom. So, Mr. Wilson, are you with us?
Hear me now?
We hear you. We can't see you, but can you put your video on as well?
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Can you hear us? Can you hear us, Mr. Wilson?
Hear you, yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you. We can't see you, but we can hear you. Are you able to turn your video on?
No, I've been trying for about the last hour. It's just not happening.
Okay, well,
sorry.
Is there anything you wish to add? I'm sure you've just heard the questioning about hours and delivery times and so on, and noise monitoring in particular. Is there anything you wish to add?
Yes. There's effectively two sources of noise. We've got HGV movements, which are going to be basically coming on and off the A4. The noise report pretty comprehensively says that out of a 24-hour period, the amount of noise generated by 30-odd vehicle movements in a 24-hour period isn't much to worry about, and I do agree. We've also got the slightly more tricky issue of fabrication work, or the light fabrication work. Now, we know the nature of the work. We know it's drilling, welding, grinding, hammering. We don't know whether that's one bloke with his mate doing it, you know, on and off throughout a working day, or whether there's a gang of 50 people doing it.
Right. Okay. I think members could hear most of that. The sound quality isn't good. Members, do you have any other further questions? Sorry, can I, before I come to Councillor Mays, Councillor Bridgman, are you happy with those answers so far?
Well, I don't think we've addressed noise monitoring at all.
Right. No. All right. Mr. Wilson, can you assist us with noise monitoring and how your department could assist if there is a problem or a complaint?
Yeah, in the normal course of events, we get loads and loads of complaints about noise, and routinely officers, colleagues of mine, go out on site and evaluate the situation to see if it's bad enough to constitute a contravention of the relevant legislation, the Environmental Protection Act. I have to say often, well, usually in fact, whilst the noise might be audible, that doesn't make it illegal.
Okay, well, you're getting nods from Councillor Bridgman, who answered who asked the question, I should say. So, are you happy with that? Right. We'll move on to Councillor Mays, who's been waiting patiently, and thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I have to declare here that I worked on a 40 megawatt power station in Malaya and a 2,000 megawatt station in UK. The major problems with getting equipment to site is the actual traffic on the road. And in this case here, taking traffic from Padworth, the Grundon site, to Slough, with heavy loads of steel, columns, beams, tanks, whatever they are, is going to affect traffic on the M4 and on the A4. So I think we have to bear that in mind, that it's not just the noise on site that is being created, it's the actual traffic on the road, and whether the load is a large load, whether it can be accommodated during the rush hour periods. On the timing, I think the councillors, the officers have got the balance about right, but they have to have that flexibility to actually take exceptional loads or large loads on the motorway and on the M4 at critical times for the construction site at Slough. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, members, I don't see any other hands coming up. So unless there's further debate, I'm looking for a proposal. Councillor Councillor Bridgman.
Chairman, officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Does that find a seconder? Could someone indicate, please? Councillor Hunt, thank you very much. So we have any other questions or debate? I have a proposal of officer's recommendation, including all the conditions on the agenda. That has been seconded. Those in favour, please show. And that is unanimous. Conditional permission is granted. Thank you. Members, that I think concludes the business for tonight. Thank you for your attention. Please, would you remain seated until the meeting is officially closed? But thank you for your time. Thank you for your decisions. Sorry. Say again? I've just been reminded, very remiss of me, the next meeting is scheduled for the 27th of this month, which would normally be for site visits on the 20th, the Wednesday before. Again, I'm in your hands. I mean, I did say last time I wasn't able to attend unusually last week, and thank you for the two of you who did attend the site visits. But if more can come, can I be, is there any flexibility for people? All right, people get pinged, people have other commitments that crop up, but it will always be good to have as many of you as possible. I'm in your hands. We normally do 9:30 on the Wednesday before. I know that causes Councillor Mays an issue. I know it causes one or two others who have to work for their livings an issue. But shall we just stick with 9:30 and hope that you can try to come? Or what would suit you is what I'm asking.
Chairman, how many applications?
Well, we don't know. We never know, Tony, but any idea of a possible hint? We don't normally.
Be 1, 2, 3.
1, 2 or 3. It could be any number between 1 and 3, Councillor Linden.
There's likely to be a couple. There's likely to be a couple.
Oh, okay, that's helpful.
I can attend, Chairman.
Good. Well, look, I'm going to say 9:30 on the 20th. Those who can attend, please do. If you can't, we do understand that other people have commitments. So if I may ask for the meeting to be closed.